Recording. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. We're here with Tracey Condosta from Hope Grows. She is a licensed professional counselor, speaker, and supervisor with Hope Grows. She has been with Hope Grows for the past 7 years, working with individuals, couples, and families that are struggling with caregiving, grief and loss, anxiety, stress, depression, and trauma through one-on-one therapy, support groups, and education and therapeutic classes. Welcome, Tracey.
Hi, thank you. I realize that my bio has a lot of commas and it feels like a run-on sentence, but it's kind of hard to break it all up and for it to sound nice and fluid. So, thank you so much for reading that off in such a nice way. So I'm Tracy. I have been with Hope Grows for about 7 years. I actually started out as an undergraduate intern, and I never left. It became home to me. I walked through the doors, and it was not this super stuffy clinical setting that you would expect, going into the counseling field. You kind of expect like office, 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 and you walk in and it is like this super airy, welcoming home that is just surrounded by nature. And I was like, oh my gosh, I hope I never leave this place. So I really did a whole headfirst dive into all things Hope Grows, and I decided to never leave. So here we are 7 years later, and I am now a licensed professional counselor. I do individual counseling groups. Oh gosh, I supervise interns. I do just a little bit of everything. We are a tiny but mighty team over at Hope Grows, so we all try to help out in, any way that we can. Today, I'm going to be talking about who we are. We are a bit of a diamond in the rough. You wouldn't really know about us unless you've already heard about us. We are an organization out in Hope, or out in Hope Grows, out in Moon Township, right near Robert Morris. So we're a small nonprofit that provides therapeutic support to family caregivers, no matter where they are in their caregiving journey. So we have seen caregivers come through the door who are brand new to caregiving, have never caregived before, are very novice, not really sure where to start. And then we've also had those who are into their grief journey, just looking for some extra support after their whole caregiving experience. We have very limited, inclusion criteria or exclusion criteria. So anybody who is coming to us and is just looking for something small or something large, we really try not to turn anyone away. The mission of Hope Grows is to address the emotional, mental, physical, and financial well-being of the family caregiver. We do this by inspiring hope through nature while empowering caregivers to seek wellness of the mind, body, and spirit. We foster the emotional, mental, and spiritual health of the family caregiver through clinical and therapeutic respite, therapy, support groups, and education. So that in and of itself is quite a mouthful. So as I jump into, what all we actually do at Hope Grows, I think this will make a little bit more sense. But before I do that, I do want to talk a little bit about the facts of caregiving. I think over the past 10-ish years, there's been some more highlight as to, caregivers in general. We aren't just calling ourselves the wife or the daughter or the husband or the sister. We're really starting to identify more as being the caregiver in addition to those other titles that we may hold. AARP does a big fat survey. I want to say I can't remember how many, it might be every 5 or so years, on caregiving statistics. So most recently, this one came out, and the numbers are pretty scary. I'm not gonna lie. At this point, there's a quarter of all adults in the US are caregiving, are providing some sort of unpaid support to those with medical conditions. 63 million Americans. That number is extremely high. You think about how many people are not being paid. You think about how much time, effort, emotional, physical, the toll that it takes on a quarter of all adults at this point. On average, a caregiver spends 27 hours a week providing care. There's a lot of caregivers that are still working full time in addition to all of this. So we're looking at a minimum of, what is that, 87 or no, 67 hours a week working. Um, it's quite a lot. 57% of caregivers find themselves in high intensity situations. These are those situations where it's outside of just medications, management, like outside of the routine, right? Where it's very life or death situations. We think about oxygen, we think about transportation, those sorts of things that, gets our hearts pumping quite a bit. 1 in every 5 caregivers rate their health as poor. So high emotional stress, high physical strain, and feelings of isolation. And then family caregivers are more likely to forego their own physical health needs to meet the challenges of caregiving, meaning more and more caregivers are, choosing to put their own health aside. So maybe not going to a PCP, like your primary care physician, going to physical therapy, even, mental health therapy, all these sorts of things in order to meet the demands that their care receiver needs, meaning going to their doctor's appointments, going to their mental health counseling appointments, being the chauffeur, doing all these sorts of things that take up that 27 hours a week. Because after the 67 hours, it's kind of hard to find time to take care of yourself. So obviously these numbers are extremely high. And because of that, it really improves that caregivers need time for themselves, need time for respite, need time to recharge. Because if they're not taking care of themselves, then they can't be a great caregiver. Whoops. So these are our areas of focus. There's quite a lot on here, but I promise it makes sense. Um, so to start off, our clinical programs and services, we have mental health counseling, grief and loss support, educational resources and programs, self-guided resources, healing horticulture, and then the Iris Respite House Bed and Breakfast and Conference Center. I'm going to jump into what all of this stuff is. So these are all of our current programming. I wanted to break it up just a little bit so that it makes some more sense. But our biggest, all of them really, anybody can join. But where I am most geared towards at this point is the emotional and mental health support. So this includes mental health counseling. We have 4 licensed professionals on staff. So they see clients for individual counseling as well as group. We have many, many support groups. Most of them are open to any disease, any sort of disease, right, or condition. So we don't have support groups that are specific to Alzheimer's or specific to cancer or specific to, Parkinson's. They're just open groups. Our groups are run in person and virtually. And to register for something like that, you would just reach out to me or submitting a form online. And I tend to do like a quick intake just to make sure that the group would be a good fit for you before, you can kind of jump right in. But otherwise, there's no RSVP really needed. We get that caregivers, things come up, you never really know. So we have lots of groups both during the day and in the evening, both in person and virtual. We also have caregiving mentoring. This is actually called Caregiver to Caregiver. And this is a program that we're really starting to, get grooving here. The idea of this Caregiver to Caregiver mentorship program is, a more seasoned caregiver, somebody who has been in, been in this world for a while and is pretty well versed, being teamed up with a new caregiver, right? So it's kind of that peer-to-peer support. It's so far it's been a really awesome program. Once you're teamed up with that seasoned caregiver. It's up to you guys to kind of make your own schedule that works for you. You guys are free to meet in person or virtually. It's really up to you how you would like the partnership to go. Right now, we have, I want to say, 15 or so mentors that are more than willing to be teamed up with, incoming caregivers. So if that's something that you're interested in, we'd be happy to team you up. And we try to team up the mentees and mentors, like if they've had similar experiences, right? We aren't going to have a new mama caregiver come in who's caring for a child get teamed up with somebody who is caring for their husband with Alzheimer's. Those two resources may not match very well. So, at times there may be a bit of a wait, just to make sure that we find the right match for you. We also have the Joy of Living program. This is a 6-week hybrid-ish program that Lisa Story, our executive director, developed. Each week focuses on a different aspect of finding joy in everyday life. So it kind of goes from maintaining balance and exploring your faith and preserving joy and finding hope and all these really fun topics that include different aspects that pull in nature and self-guided therapeutic writing. It's a really awesome introspective webinar series. So that group, we're trying to run it at least twice a year. There's a cost associated with it. While the majority of our programming is free, there are certain things that do have a material cost, and the Joy of Living is one of them. The next is Powerful Tools for Caregivers. This is a national program. It was developed by a college out west. I cannot remember for the life of me right now what it is, but that is another 6-week series that is usually entirely online. We tend to run that one online, where myself and 2 other counselors at Hope Grows, we are certified facilitators of this program. It is scripted. It is the same across the board. Again, each week kind of focuses on certain topics that seem to be common among caregivers. It's a great group. It's great to have, these certain tools in your tool belt, so to speak, so that you can feel the best you can and the most confident you can while in your caregiving journey. We also do family mediation. Now, we don't love this term, right? Because it sounds a little bit lawyer-y. But really what the idea is of this family mediation is, we've seen a whole lot of families come in that are just not on the same page. We may have the care receiver come in, and then we have a father or a sister or something like that, and everybody wants something different. And our goal for that is to get everybody onto the same page and really enhance communication. So a family may come to Hope Grows, or maybe we jump on a Zoom call and everybody gives us their point of view. And then we try to find some common ground somewhere so that we can find a good path forward. It's similar to family counseling, but it's not counseling per se. It's just to really get everybody onto the same page again. Okay, so that's a little bit of the emotional and mental health support. Of course, there's emotional and mental support in pretty much everything that we do in some sort of aspect, but those are our core programs. Next is the horticulture education and therapy. So if you've ever been out to Hope Grows, you will see that we are surrounded by gardens. At this point, we have 12 healing and restorative gardens on site. So each garden has its own self-guided stress-reducing activity. There's a little QR code in there. So you take your phone, you walk through the gardens, you can scan that QR code, and it tells you all about the garden, the different flowers that are in there, and then a stress reducing activity that kind of coincides with the garden. So it's if you start and actually do each activity all the way through, it takes about an hour or so, which is awesome. Whenever we're talking about that horticultural therapy piece of bringing nature into your therapeutic practice, it is a great way to get started. I think a lot of people can get a little bit intimidated at the thought of incorporating nature into therapy, and this is a great way to do that. We also have pollinator and nature educational camps. Those are throughout the summer. We are holding those right now. They're open to kiddos to come and join. I want to say it's from ages 7 to 12, I want to say. And the camps are during the first week of each month of the summer, and it's all about pollinators. So birds, bees, and butterflies. Each day on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, they'll learn about a different pollinator. They'll do some activities. They'll hear a speaker. It's super awesome, and it's really great to see. Therapeutic respite. We have a monthly tea service that meets, so you can come to Hope Grows and drink and have some high tea. It's fabulous. Our innkeeper slash chef slash beekeeper, Barbie, she is just the hospitality queen, and she does absolutely an amazing job at providing, that three-tiered tea service, where you can just come and relax, enjoy nature, and enjoy the people that you're around. You're absolutely more than able to come by yourself and meet new people too, if that's something that sounds like it would interest you. You don't have to bring somebody else. But it is a great way to kind of get your feet wet in all things Hope Grows. We also deliver meals during Thanksgiving. Caregivers are already up to their ears in responsibilities. And so thinking about actually having to prepare a full Thanksgiving dinner can be pretty darn intimidating. Over the past, I think we've been doing this 9, 10 years now. We've teamed up with Bob Evans, and they prepare Thanksgiving meals in a nice, to-go tray. You get turkey, potatoes, corn or beans, and pie and bread, like the whole shebang. And we deliver all of these meals about a 20-ish mile radius from downtown Pittsburgh. Last year, unfortunately, we weren't able to do it, but the year prior, we delivered over 400 meals. So it's definitely a group effort. It is my favorite event that we throw. I like to dress up and play music and do the whole thing. It's really an awesome feel-good event. Of course, there's no price to that. We do have a sign up that goes out about a week before or 2 weeks before, because they fill up fast. You can have anywhere between 2 to 4 meals. You can request more depending on the situation. But yeah, so we try to do that a couple of weeks beforehand. We also have classes and events throughout the year. They're not necessarily scheduled. Sometimes we're like, you know what, let's do a gardening class, or let's do a trauma class, or let's do an anxiety class, or an art class. It depends on who our interns are, who our partners are at that time that are really looking to implement their services with our populations. So just keeping an eye out for that on our newsletter or on our website is a great way to kind of see what's going on. Whew. And then finally is our overnight bed and breakfast. So this has been just an awesome, from the start of me at Hope Grows to now. It was always this idea that Hope Grows was going to turn into a bed and breakfast for caregivers to come and take a break away. And it was, I want to say, we got held up a little bit with COVID, as a lot of people did. But over the past, let's see, 3, 4 years, I want to say 3 years, our doors have been open so caregivers can come and actually take a breakaway overnight. We have 2 rooms open at this time. There's a therapeutic pool, of course, the gardens. There's opportunities to set up a time to talk with a counselor while you're at Hope Grows. This is another one of those services that does have a fee associated with it. However, we do have donated stays, so feel free to reach out to us about that. Like in the beginning of the presentation, I talked about financial ability, and one of the big pieces of Hope Grows is meeting caregivers wherever they are, and that includes financial ability as well. We'll never turn anyone away due to financial means. So we try our best to make it work for everybody. And research shows that a change of environment is amazing for caregivers. So that was really the driving factor between the bed and breakfast for caregivers to come and take a break away. You don't have to be a current caregiver. You could also be a past caregiver. You could also be a friend of the caregiver. You could be, the the doors are open to all who have cared for someone or supporting someone caring for someone. There's restorative activities and services available on site as well. We have lots of different therapeutic like boxes, like activity boxes that include bird watching. We got puzzles. We've have some coloring activities. There's something around every corner that is geared specifically towards caregivers. This idea of not being able to do anything for themselves. Sometimes we lose interest in things that we may have previously enjoyed, or we aren't really sure what we enjoy anymore. So we wanted to keep it pretty darn open so that you can explore at your own pace. You can kind of look and see, or you could sleep the whole time. That's totally up to you too. That it's really up to you how you want to spend that time. And that can be a little bit overwhelming at times, to kind of pick and choose what it is how you want to spend your time. And luckily, we have therapists, we have other supportive people on staff that would be more than willing to kind of talk you through it and see what kind of floats your boat. A typical, we tend to get this question a lot of like, what does it look like whenever you go to stay at the overnight bed and breakfast? So check-in is usually around 3 o'clock. You'll check in just like you would at a hotel. You walk in, we have a nice little check-in desk. You can get settled in your room. You can go for a swim. You can go for a walk. You can have your therapy session if that's something that you want to do. You can do some of those activity boxes. You can just go right to bed. Really, it's up to you how you want to spend that time. And then in the rooms, each room has its own ensuite bathroom and a TV, and you can sleep in however you'd like. We have dinners that are available for purchase from the 412 Project, which is a restaurant right down the street from Hope Grows. But you could also, DoorDash something or go out to eat if that's something that you'd like to do. In the morning, breakfast is provided from Barbie. She makes a awesome, like a la carte type breakfast. There isn't a specific menu. She just is, she makes pastries and there's fruit and it's fabulous. You wake up feeling like you're being taken care of. And then checkout is around 11. Of course, these timeframes may not work for every caregiver, and that's okay. So if that is the case and you want to do like maybe a day trip where you can't get there until 5, but you want to stay till 2 the next day, just reach out to Barbie at Hope Grows or myself, and we'll try to make it work. We're very flexible. We don't want you to feel like that, oh, these times are super strict, because we want you to be able to relax and not feel like you are being pushed around at Hope Grows. So this is pretty much all the stuff that we have going on at Hope Grows right now. There's quite a lot, and there's lots of things that are kind of open as well. So, if there's something on here that you're like, I have more questions about that, or, oh, don't you do this? Feel free to reach out. One thing that I don't think I put on here was the resources. Well, a big, big part of caregiving is looking for resources in your area, and it can be extremely time consuming and frustrating and not really sure if it's the right fit for you. So, between myself and both undergrad and graduate level interns, we do a lot of resource sourcing for caregivers. So, if you're ever looking for something, feel free to reach out to us and say, hey, you know what? Is there any in-home caregiving services in my area? Or who do I call for this? Or can I go somewhere for that? Or are there adult daycares? Or, whatever it may be, we have a huge database of different resources. And depending on your zip code, we'd be happy to populate a list and send it over to you. So I'm thinking that's pretty much it in terms of what all we do. Um, our latest initiative is this Gathering Table and Legacy initiative. So this all sort of started from caregivers feeling like they can't really tell their story. No matter if you've been caregiving from, it's been a week, right? Or we're way later into our caregiving experience, and it's just extremely isolating. Caregiving can be a very isolating and lonely experience. So we thought to ourselves, what can we do to bring caregivers together? So, this idea is to bring caregivers or those who have experienced grief in any sort of way. You don't have to actually lose the person you're caring for and to experience that loss, to experience grief. So, we want to bring these people together to share a meal. You can peer mentor one another, and there's storytelling. This is creating a supportive space to for connection, nourishment, and the preservation of lived experiences. There's a couple of typos in my presentation I just noticed, but that's okay. And we do this through Grief Soup. So, Grief Soup is a time for these caregivers to come to Hope Grows, actually prep vegetables and prep the ingredients that go into a huge cauldron of soup. And that soup, you get to eat the soup and sit around the round table with everyone and share a meal together. And that's where you eat and connect with one another. After the meal, the participants are able to take home a quart of soup for either themselves or to give to another caregiver or someone who is dealing with grief. We like the idea of make one, take one, give one. To really, not only spread the word about caregiving awareness, but also, think about how many times you've received food, right? In times of sickness or in times of grief, right? That's kind of, it's like a norm. So we're like, why don't we bring people together in the, process of all of that? So this program is new. There is no cost associated with it. If this is something that you might be interested in, again, you can just reach out to myself or sign up online. Um, it's awesome. Besides Barbie, who's running it, we also have a therapist who is there throughout the whole process to help facilitate, storytelling and things like that. It's supposed to be like a very lighthearted, great way to make connection with other people who get it. This is not really a support group. We have support groups before and after Grief Soup, if that's something that you need. But Grief Soup is really a way to just kind of continue that connection, and really build on that. So that is pretty much my whole presentation. Um, These are the ways that you can contact me. My email is there as well as the Hope Grows website. And I am more than happy to, answer any questions that anyone has. I know it can be a lot of information to take in. Um, but yeah, I'm more than happy to answer any questions that anyone has.